Thank you for tuning in to Mr. Clip's Toy Shop. On today's review, we take a look at the Storm Collectibles DC's Injustice Gods Among Us Darkseid. Today I'll be reviewing this figure in the following categories: accessories, articulation, design, is it essential to your collection, functionality, and price. Once all scores are totaled, I'll give you my opinion if this figure is a pass or a purchase. So this one here is one that I wasn't sure if I was going to pick up from Storm Collectibles, but here he is. I want to make mention of something right now. I'm having a lot of natural light come through in the background, which is not working with the lights that I have around. So I'm actually going to stop this video and shoot it once the sun goes down. Also, the city is pretty live. I can hear an ice cream truck going on outside. So I want to shoot the video when it's a lot quieter and when I can control the lighting. So for accessories, it doesn't seem like you have a lot inside the box, but when you really take it all out, you see that Darkseid comes with quite a lot of accessories. So just starting with the heads, you get 4 heads in total, which may be too many for some, but in my opinion, it's a fantastic amount. So I'm just going to zoom in on the head a little bit. It just looks fantastic. The scope work is beautiful. The eyes are painted a crimson red. Has to be metallic paint. You can see the shimmer from the light. I really like this head sculpt, which is the one that actually comes on Darkseid. This is more of a gritting expression. Same crimson eyes. Scope work again is very good. Details throughout on the teeth. And the teeth are actually a different color from the face, which I'm happy about. Originally, I thought that they were the same color. The next head I'll go to is this one, which is the same scope as the one you see here. The difference is the Omega Beam starting to spew out of the eyes. This is probably the version that I will keep on Darkseid. We'll see. Then you get a head sculpt with a yelling expression. In addition to the head sculpts, you receive 4 pair of hands, 2 which come on the figure, which are fisted. And I like that you can tell that it's gloves. You can see the seam work. You can also see the knuckles and other imprints of the fingers showing throughout the gloves. And probably my favorite accessory is the Omega Beam. You receive 2 of them, which plug into one of the head sculpts. We'll get to that once we get in the functionality department. So for accessories, what would have been an extra touch or bonus would of course been the Killing Glove or the Omega Box. However, I will not hold this against Storm Collectible. As to my recollection, neither one of those items are in the game. So for overall accessories, I'm going to give Darkseid a 10 out of 10. So for articulation, it doesn't appear that the head moves much. However, if you push the head back and tilt it that way, he does look up a good amount. He is able to look down that far. You do get rotation side to side, a good amount of pivot, and some back and forth movement as well. The arm is able to move up about that much. If I go any further, the arm actually pops out. You're able to get it to rotate a full 360. Upper bicep cut. Next point of rotation are on the wrists. The wrists sit on a ball peg, so they are able to rotate side to side as well as up and down. Just came off. And the arms are double jointed, bending in about that much. Moving on to the torso, there are some major limitations. I'm assuming, like most Storm Collectibles, there's an A and a B portion. However, I can barely get any to move. So using the combination of both, he's barely able to move forward any. Same thing really back. You do get some pivot side to side. You do get rotation. And that's about it for the torso. With the legs, they're able to stretch out way further than I would have assumed. Kick forward that much, backwards all the way. You do get upper rotation. The next point, however, of movement is all the way at the ankles, which I don't like. There should have been a point at rotation at the boot, but unfortunately it's not. So with the ankles, they are able to move up about that much, which is very limiting, especially that nothing is blocking this area. It goes down about that much. Pivot on the outside, just barely. The inside, it's on a weird angle. Storm really has to get better at that. And you do get toe articulation. Almost forgot to mention the knees are single jointed, bending in about that much. So for articulation, the figure is pretty limited. There are major limitations within the torso as well as within the legs. So for overall articulation, I'm giving Darkseid a 6 out of 10. So for design, this version of Darkseid strays away from its classic look. It is more closer to that of the Rebirth look. Keep in mind, however, this version comes from the video game Gods Among Us. And in my opinion, the video game creators did an excellent job of their own interpretation with Darkseid. So I really like the scope work, especially along the flesh tone. To me, it reminds me of molten rock that's breaking. And it's not just on the face, it carries throughout the arms. So with Darkseid, there are a variation of purples. All appear to be done in a semi-satin finish, with the exception of that on the pants, which is a bit darker. So I think there are about 3 variations of purple on this figure here. And if you look throughout, the color is really done well. All paint seems to be where it needs to be. Now, with the gold, they did miss a few spots, especially on the outside of the lining. But one of my favorite colors here has to be the eyes. I just feel they did a great job of capturing the eyes, and even though it doesn't light up, it does have that sheen to it. So another common issue some people have with Darkseid is what size is he supposed to be? Small, kind of large, or ridiculously big? In my opinion, this is a great size for Darkseid here. So for design, I'm going to give them a 10 out of 10. So is this version of Darkseid essential to your collection? I guess it depends on how you envision Darkseid. I'm personally a fan of the classic version, even though it looks like he's wearing a t-shirt with a belt. I do find this version of Darkseid more menacing. Fortunately for collectors, they do have a few versions to choose from. You have the DC Universe Classic, which of course has been out a long time and is very antiquated. You have different releases, I think some from DC Direct. And I remember the 2 releases being exceptionally big. One I'm pretty sure was DC Direct. I forget where the other Darkseid came from. In my opinion, those versions of Darkseid are too big. And then most recently, you have the Mezco version of Darkseid, which strays more closer to the classic version. I found the proportions of Mezco Darkseid a bit weird. Also, it's very expensive. Believe it hit the market at $180. That was before shipping. That was before tax. So being that this version of Darkseid is more based on a video game than he is in the comics or any movies, I think that brings down how essential this particular version of Darkseid is. So I'll be giving Darkseid an 8 out of 10. So for functionality, let's start with the head. The very first thing that I noticed with this figure is that it's missing something. And in my opinion, that's a LED light feature. Each head should have come with that. However, it does not. Even though the Omega beams look good without it, it would have looked so much better if it did have a light up feature. So now, starting with this particular head, the other issue is that this is the only head that you could actually place any of the Mega beams with, which sucks because we have 2 other really good head sculpts that you can't use this effect with. So in order to change the effect, simply you pull out from the eyes. And with the 2 beams here, they simply plug in. What I found easiest to do, you can remove part of it, which I believe is this part. Once that part is removed, play around with the eye. You'll figure out which one it goes into. Yes, there's a specific side for a specific eye. So I'm just going to go off camera for a moment. Okay, so now that I have those pieces ported in, it is very easy to now port in the Omega effects. Simply just plug them straight in. And before I plug in the other one, I just want to show you on the end, you could actually remove this if you choose to. That way it looks like the beam is just continuing to travel. So I'll just leave this up here. And I'll plug it in. So by no means are the beams difficult to port in. I just needed to have the figure in hand to do so. So once they're in, they look very good. What I can see happening over time is that being that this is a separate piece, at some point, and I kind of think some point soon, I can see the beam starting to slip out of one of the slots. So you may have to glue it. Something else to think about is that If this is stepped on or sat on, it will absolutely break. So you have to make a decision if you're going to leave your figure displayed this way, or is this just going to be an accessory that you keep in package. So let's get this head removed along with the Omega beams. The head is on a small ball peg. I wish that it would have been a little bit larger, but there still is no issue getting the head to snap right on. Okay, so the head is on. So what I'm going to call a tunic is all soft goods from here all the way to the shoulder. It's very flexible, even in the back, which just strikes me as weird that we don't receive better movement in the torso. The soft goods do continue onto the gauntlets, the lower portion here. It could actually be removed, but it is very soft and pliable. Let's go with the hand test. Hand pops off easy enough and goes on easy enough. Now, something that I certainly will be deducting points for, there's a portion in the video game to where Darkseid blocks and this hand is able to move up like so. So I think we should have received a hand very similar, maybe with the ball peg coming out the back, so that he can portray that move in action figure form. However, he cannot. I'm very disappointed that the boot does not rotate, but at least if the boot did not rotate, the gauntlet or the armor that's around it should have. What I do like, however, is that in the video game, Darkseid typically has his hands to the back. And even though this isn't perfect, you can have him place his hands behind his back. So for functionality, where I'm really going to be deducting the majority of the points, it's definitely going to be with the heads. The fact that you can't interchange the Omega Beam effect with each head, I just feel cheated. The fact that it doesn't incorporate some LED lighting, I also feel a bit cheated. The soft goods around the body is a very nice touch. However, it defeats the purpose. I feel that the soft goods should allow the body to move more freely. However, it does not. I failed to mention in the articulation portion that the shoulders have a butterfly joint moving that much forward, that much backwards. I can assure you I counted for the points in articulation thinking about that butterfly joint. I just forgot to mention it. So for functionality, I'm going to give this figure a 4 out of 10. So before we get into pricing, I just have to let this be known. This was just not a fun video to do. Had a lot of issues with lighting, not just natural lighting, but my own lighting, falling, collapsing, casting shadows, issues with sounds, just very noisy throughout the city, sirens, and other noises in my background. Just really had to do a lot of re-edits and a lot of reshoots. I don't know how this is all going to paste together. I'm pretty sure it may not be as smooth as some of my other videos, but as they say in show business, the show must go on. So now for pricing. This figure comes in at a whopping $105. That is before tax, that is before shipping. Add in the 2, you're at $121, of course, depending where you ship from. So is Darkseid worth the cost of admission? Let's talk about a few things. He comes with a good amount of accessories. Really, the selling point has to be the head sculpts. The negative to the head sculpts is that they can't be used with the Omega Beam, which is really just unfortunate. Now let's talk about the Omega Beams. They look fantastic. I can see them breaking over time. I can see them not holding in place over time. So Storm Collectibles, in my opinion, should have included more Omega Beams, some smaller in size, some as replacements, and even possibly offering it as a snap and connect piece, being able to break and attach at certain points. That way you can make it longer, you can make it smaller. I also feel that this figure should have had a light up feature. For $100, a figure should come with a light up feature. Mezco gives their figures light up features at $100. I think a great accessory that could have been added, SH Fig Arts does it with a few of their figures, Vegeta being one, to where he's sort of in that locked arm pose. Actually, maybe it's Piccolo. But maybe if they had something reverse engineered to where his arms were behind his back in that way, I think really would have been cool. And last but not least, there are certainly some limitations with articulation. None that I think that will prevent most people from putting this figure in a pose that they want him to be in. Darkseid, in my opinion, is not a flexible guy. You do not see him in many exaggerated poses. I think him sort of standing at a stance, looking. See, this is the part to where this has been a rough video. Can't even talk. So I don't think Darkseid needs to be put in exaggerated poses. I think having a pose to where he's standing straight up, really showing that menacing stature, is what most collectors will choose to pose him. So very quickly, I just want to compare this to the Mezco version of Darkseid, which came in at $180, $75 more expensive than this figure. That one came with a light up feature. It was also made out of polystone as well, which I thought was a very nice touch. And it came with items such as a cape and a mother box. That's because Mezco decided to do a rendition of the classic version. I also thought that figure was overpriced. I think this figure is overpriced. So for pricing, I'm going to give Darkseid a 7 out of 10, which should give Darkseid an overall Cliff score of 45 out of 60. So is he a pass or a purchase? In my opinion, this is probably the best version of Darkseid that I have. So for that, I am going to say it is a purchase. So I apologize beforehand. I do not have a lot of my Storm collectible figures around to do a lot of comparison with this guy. Really wish I had Saget and some of the larger figures so that you can get a good idea of what size he is. Have to work with what I have. So here's Darkseid standing next to NECA's version of John Stewart Green Lantern. If you're wondering what happened to his legs, all I can say, my children were involved. Here's Darkseid standing next to Marvel Legends Green Goblin. Here's Darkseid next to McFarlane's DC Universe Superman. And I gotta say, this is the first time that I've taken that figure out of package. It looks fantastic. The paint apps are absolutely beautiful. It is leaning a bit forward as I can't seem to get him stand in any other direction. And for those wondering how he scales with Mezco, here's Mezco's version of Jim Gordon. So I want to thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. I hope to see you during the next review.